bearer of the curse. It was my own manifestation that led you here. The ancient dragon has watched over the world for eons past.
What did that dragon tell you? That thing is a prop. That living, breathing sham. A false deity. Offering nothing. Don't be fooled.
Do not resist. The dragon welcomes you.
Placidusax is the ancient dragon. The rune of death is the ashen mist heart. Crumbling Farum Azula is the dragon Aerie. Elden Ring is Dark Souls 2. Every story needs its climax where the narrative reaches the heights of character growth and development. The literal heights of both Dark Souls 2's and Elden Ring's narrative and gameplay progression are found in the clouds above the crumbling worlds of Drangleic and the lands between. The echoes of ages long since past can be found here, left alone amidst the storm. The dragon welcomes us at the end and beginning of time. The Dragon Aerie is a late-game area in Dark Souls 2 that serves as the climax of the player and narrative progression. It sits above large columns of rock that extend high into the clouds. The various platforms atop these great pillars are connected by a series of rope lines and rope bridges that sway in the turbulent winds. This is where the dragons of Drangleic reside, and we can see them resting, guarding their eggs, or soaring in the sky. The most notable landmark of the area is the Dragon Shrine. The shrine houses the ancient dragon, thought to be the last of its kind. However, this dragon bears a secret that will be discussed later. The dragon is guarded by a large company of Drake Keepers and Dragon Knights. As shown in the Drake Keepers' various weapon descriptions, colossal warriors staunchly watch over the shrine, ready to defend its residents, or allow one worthy enough to be granted audience. In the case here, we as the bearer of the curse are worthy to be granted audience with the dragon. The Dragon Knights don the weapons and armor created from the black scales of a dragon of legend, which could be a reference to Calamite from Dark Souls 1. Essentially, Dragon Aerie and the shrine serve as the sacred place for dragons and dragon protectors alike. A similar level that resides above the clouds can be found in Elden Ring in the form of Crumbling Farum Azula. In similar fashion, Farum Azula sits high above the lands between. Instead of being held up by large pillars of rock, it is suspended in time with a raging storm as its centerpiece. This location similarly serves as the home of the ancient dragons. Dozens of them soar in the sky and can also be found resting among the ruins. This place was also meant to honor the dragons and also functions as a mausoleum guarded by the Beastmen. At the center of the storm, Dragon Lord Placidusax can be found in a deep meditation awaiting the return of his god as the former lord of the lands between. His remembrance states, "The Dragon Lord whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time is said to have been Elden Lord in the age before the Erdtree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return." Farum Azula was once the seat of power for the former Elden Lord and has now been reduced to, well, a crumbling shadow of its former self. The other notable figure of this area is Malekith, the Black Blade. Here he guards over destined death, of which we are looking to unbind in our quest to burn the Erdtree thorns to gain access to the Elden Ring within. Both Dragon Aerie and the Dragon Shrine, of which I will simply refer to as Dragon Aerie to represent both areas, and Farum Azula share many visual aesthetic similarities. Most notably is the fact that both of these locations are suspended above the clouds in their respective worlds. These locations are surrounded by swirling winds and soaring drakes and dragons. In many ways visually, Farum Azula is the upgraded version of Dragon Aerie. Farum Azula sports a large storm in its center, which likely would have not been possible during DS2's design and development at that time. Beyond graphical fidelity, Farum Azula is a much larger and involved area where verticality, thanks to the jump addition in Elden Ring, allows for more interesting traversal. Both function as a place to honor the dragons, with protectors outfitted to honor their masters. We see imagery and depictions of the beastmen and dragons in the various carvings and statues that decorate the area. It was the former seat of power when dragons essentially ruled the lands between. This is confirmed through the Old Lord's Talisman description, which reads, "A legendary talisman depicting the ancient king whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time, extends the duration of sorceries and incantations. It is said that the ancient royal city of Farum Azula has been slowly crumbling since time immemorial." Besides being the former seat of power of the ancient king Placidusax, these ruins are suspended in time. Only when entering the storm do we see the storm freeze to reveal the king himself. In similar fashion, dragons in Dark Souls 2 are the wardens of time. This concept is reinforced by the description of the watch dragon Parmo, which reads, "The black and white contrast depicts the ebb and flow of the fate of all things living, and the serpentine dragons that watch over the march of time." Dragons in both games watch over time in a similar manner based on the descriptions we can find from items in both levels. The Ashen Mist Heart given by the Ancient Dragon can also add more weight to these similarities as its description reads, "The magic of the Ancient Dragon allows one to delve into the memories of the withered." The Ashen Mist Heart allows the bearer of the curse to travel into the memories of the giants of the past, the dragon in Freya's boss room, as well as access to Vendrick's former self. It seems that Farum Azula is not only building upon the aesthetic of Dragon Aerie, it's building on the themes of time introduced in Dark Souls more extensively. Besides housing many dragons, both locations essentially house the dragon of the game in the form of Placidusax and the Ancient Dragon. The Ancient Dragon is a mysterious figure with little item descriptions or dialogue hinting at its origins upon initial discovery. If the bearer of the curse decides to attack the dragon, it will drop a giant soul upon defeat instead of a dragon's soul. The Ancient Dragon's soul can only be accessed by way of entering the Ancient Dragon memories with the Ashen Mist Heart. Since this dragon does not drop a dragon soul, this has led many to believe that it was the creation of Aldia, or at the very least, not a legitimate ancient dragon. Nishandra's dialogue also reinforces this notion, with her referencing the dragon as a prop and false deity. Shalquar's dialogue drives this theory home, with her line stating,
"You'll find a great creature far to the east, a colossal thing with the strength to match its size, or something playing the part at least."
This suggests that the ancient dragon is not a true dragon, but the idea that it was created by Aldia is still unclear, without confirmation from item descriptions. But since the Aerie follows Aldia's keep, and the large dragon skeleton is the centerpiece of the keep's entryway, it's safe to assume Aldia was experimenting with the creation of a dragon. Despite not being a true dragon, it still holds great significance to the story and gameplay progression. It gives the bearer the Ashen Mist Heart, which allows the player to travel through the memories of the giants in order to obtain the giant's kinship in order to reach the Throne of Want. Even though the dragon is not a legitimate dragon, the dragons and guardsmen still flock to this area to join in the worship, protection, and veneration of the ancient dragon. Mirroring this importance, Dragon Lord Placidusax was the former ruler of a prehistoric period before the Erd Tree. The Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman description states, "The ancient dragons who ruled in the prehistoric era before the Erd Tree would protect their lord as a wall of living rock. And so it is that the shape of the dragon became symbolic of all manners of protections." Placidusax lost his role as Elden Lord when his god would flee, never to return, as referenced in his remembrance shown earlier. Similar to the ancient dragon of Dark Souls 2, followers would rally behind Placidusax. In this case, they would rally for the hunt of Baal the Dread and his kind, establishing the foundations of Dragon Communion. These origins are shared to the Tarnished by the Dragon Communion priestess dialogue stating, "In a long time past, Baal turned upon the Dragon Lord. The foul traitor assailed our master and inflicted a grievous wound, only to make a hasty retreat, becoming a sworn enemy of the brood. Since that day, Baal and his bloodline, the Drakes, have served as sacrifices for Dragon Communion." The Beastmen were also loyal followers who were given the gift of lightning in order to protect Placidusax, according to the Beastmen Ashes, stating, "Spirits of the Beastmen from doomed Farum Azula, the slowly crumbling ruins in the skies. These ruins are said to be the remains of a giant mausoleum enshrining an ancient dragon, guarded by chosen beastmen who wield weapons clad in lightning." Placidusax's stasis would leave a power vacuum in the lands between, allowing for the greater will in Queen Marika to establish rule and the events leading to the Shattering and the events following as we experience them in-game. Funnily enough, the ancient dragon smithing stones are derived from Placidusax's scales, allowing for weapons capable of slaying a god to be created. It seems Placidusax got the last laugh in the end. While vastly different in terms of draconic legitimacy, these two dragons share some similar characteristics and gameplay function. Key endgame items are essentially given to the player or derived from them. The bearer of the curse needs the Ashen Mist Heart to continue the plot and story forward, and the Tarnished needs god-slaying weapons to defeat the Elden beast, which can be made using the scales of Placidusax. They represent the dragons as the lords of the species and subject of worship for many followers. They are treated like the OGs, so to speak, despite one not being an original. They also represent the ages of the past. They are relics of the past or playing the part. Once majestic and free, their time has long since passed in the worlds of Drangleic and the lands between. They both continue the peaceful and meditative nature of ancient dragons depicted in Dark Souls 1, with oddly calm and beautiful locations, despite being surrounded by torrential winds. The eye of the storm is the most calm after all. Farum Azula and Dragon Aerie are accessed by or continue the progression of the guiding maidens of both games, Melina and the Emerald Herald. The Emerald Herald awaits the bearer of the curse at the Dragon Aerie. Her dialogue states that her manifestations led the bearer here and that she has been waiting for them all along. Here she gives the player the Age Feather, and its description states, "The child of the dragon, sequestered away from the world, imagined a world of boundless possibilities from the mere sight of a feather." The Emerald Herald is a child of dragons as suggested by the description. Dragon Aerie not only represents the climax before the end of gameplay progression, but also Shanalot's character arc. Similarly, Farum Azula, or in this case access to it, requires the involvement of Melina, the evolution of the Emerald Herald. Melina sacrifices herself in order to help the Tarnished breach the Erdtree thorns and unbind destined death on a non-frenzy flame playthrough. Again, this is the end of Melina, much like it is for the Emerald Herald. This is where both of their stories either come to a climax or end completely. This motif established in Dark Souls 2 with the Emerald Herald is repeated in a somewhat similar narrative and gameplay fashion, but also happens to take place before or essentially at the start of these sister levels. It evokes a bit of déjà vu upon closer inspection. Dragon Aerie and Farum Azula share many similar mechanics from a gameplay and narrative perspective. As stated earlier, both levels are the climax of the game and also represent that same sense of climax in their visual design as being suspended shrines in the clouds. These mark the narrative ascension of the story towards an apex or climax, which is the essential core of all and any successful narrative in any media. These levels also house the respective MacGuffins of both games. Dragon Aerie grants the player the Ashen Mist Heart, allowing the player to travel through the giant's memories, and Farum Azula houses the Rune of Destined Death. Both the Rune and the Mist Heart represent the start of the conclusion of the base game narrative and gameplay progression. This is where both games wrap up their respective odysseys, with items that allow for access to key end areas that were blocked off. These keys to the kingdoms, so to speak, can be found in the clouds of both Drangleic and the lands between. With all this in mind, Crumbling Farum Azula is the evolution of Dragon Aerie. Thanks to graphical fidelity and gameplay development and a less turbulent development overall, it seems the original vision of Dragon Aerie has been realized through Farum Azula. Farum Azula not only expands on dragon lore and its dragon lord, the additional factions like the Beastmen help to deepen the rule of the dragons and their influence even after their departure from the seat of power. Aside from the obvious visual aesthetic similarities, both zones expand on the themes of time and the control and manipulation of it through the dragons and NPCs of the area. Perhaps both dragons are, quote, false deities. Despite being the original dragon, Placidusax was likely viewed in similar fashion by the Golden Order as a prop of the old world. If Marika could speak, she might have had a similar choice of words like Nashandra has for the ancient dragons. The climax of the Odysseys of Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring take place where dragons dwell, in the past and in the eye of the storm. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share any additional connections you see with both of these levels. If there's a little something that I missed, feel free to share, as well as any opinions or insights on these two areas generally. If you like these concepts on the similarities of Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring, feel free to check out my playlist on this very idea. If you like my thoughts on Souls games and other games broadly, subscribe and like this video. Every little bit is greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, and remember, our God will one day return. So let us sit like stone a little while longer and dwell beyond time. Take care.